Hey, this is Doug. Here's part two of the special radio video edition of Doug Pagitt Radio. I did an interview with Matthew Lee Anderson on his article that was in the March edition of Christianity Today in 2013, March 2013, called Here Come the Radicals. David Platt, Francis Chan, Shane Claiborne, and now Kyle Idleman are dominating a Christian bestsellers list by attacking our comfortable Christianity. But is it radical enough, asks Matthew, and we chatted about it. Here's part two of the interview.
Oh, that's so interesting because that's how I read. I mean, I kind of picked up the magazine. It was laying there, and it's got a picture of my friend on the cover, and I'm like, oh boy, here we go again. And, and I've been a part of enough of these movements that have been on the cover of these magazines and you never know if the good cats over at CT want to be a kingmaker or if they feel like they want to take you to the woodshed, right? So you never really know what's going to be on the cover that way, and I kind of picked it up thinking, well, here we go, because I have this bias that says, Christianity Today would love to have another group of kind of conservative voices that are doing big, big things to reinforce the idea that evangelicalism is as strong as ever, right? Look at these guys. They have big churches, young people, all this kind of stuff, lots of book sales. And then I start reading it. And I'm like, wow, now, Matthew, you're doing something else here. And I thought it was interesting that you were really going after that, not what do they believe per se, but the rhetoric, as you say, that they were using to try to make their point. And because, different, and I thought that was so insightful to put this cluster of people together for using the same kind of superlative Christianity that you just need, if you were more committed, more faithful, more sold out, more or less a fan and more whatever, then this would all make sense. And I think you and I might come down on different, like I think Christianity does that on the whole. I think it tends to oversell itself and not call to a more mundane life. But I really appreciated the way you suggested in the article that that's the thing that seems to be missing is the ordinary life that people are going to live over time.
Yeah, and look, so part of the problem is some of this is contextual. If I think we lived in a different environment with lots of different background commitments, I'd be less worried about some of this rhetoric and the effect that it might have. But because we're lacking, for instance, robust commitments to a rich doctrine of creation, right? As sort of structurally and as a movement, this rhetoric ends up being, in one sense, almost anti-creational without intending to. And if you ask all of these guys and you say, "What's your doctrine of creation?" they're going to say all the right things, and I'm going to say, "Yes, all that is true," but structurally. Because that's not sort of built in, I don't think. I think the rhetoric has unintended consequences. And so in one sense, I'm really not even trying to criticize. I'm just trying to say, like, look, let's really think through whether or not the cure is actually the cure here, or whether we've sort of misdiagnosed the disease.
There's a part in the start of the article where you write this sentence. You say, it's really hard to read these books one after another and confidently declare yourself a Christian at the end. I thought that was really interesting. Like, there's a sense of, in a kind of Christianity, and I think these books want to hold that out, that you don't want someone to become too confident that they've got it nailed, but at the other hand, to live with such a bold confidence that they would give everything up. And not in and I get that Calvinists and you might be more comfortable with that tribe. Like there's a way of sort of doing that is kind of theological. Like, look, we never really know what God knows. Now, I don't do it that way, but that's one kind of argument. But this is different. The way these guys argue, it seems to me, I've heard them more than I've read them. They're kind of arguing you're really not doing it enough, and you know it. So it's not like I don't know the mind of God. Perhaps God, has a judgment for me that I didn't see coming, and whatever God does is fine with me. It's more I could do something about it if I tried harder or cared enough or invested more or sacrificed more, but I probably won't, and that's going to be part of the self-loathing process that people go through.
Yeah, potentially. Though Platt has in Platt's subsequent books, I mean, he's much more careful to avoid making it seem like it's totally up to you to do these things. He was criticized, pretty strongly by some in the Reformed community for coming off that way, and I think so. He's sensitive to that sort of critique.
Yeah. But he's got that holy, and I don't mind this sort of holiness, pull yourself up by your bootstraps thing, and they do have that, right? They do have the that sensibility about them.
Yeah, which is in one sense understandable. There's a long tradition of this within the church, and fruit is a real thing. And if you don't got it, I think you got to start asking questions. And Paul does this. Test yourselves if you are in the faith. He'll add those conditionals, and remembering that within the experience of our lives, those hypotheticals and those conditionals have to be a part of our self-reflection. That's definitely what they're driving us toward. And I appreciate that. I think it's good. It's not necessarily problematic that it was. I was sort of uncertain about my state.
All right, that's the end of part 2. It just keeps getting more and more interesting. Stick with us.